Hi, Lisa here with Dawn. We're excited to be back. We have a new series that's called Fully Formed. And in this series, it's not that we ever are truly fully formed. We're always still rising. But what we hope to share is suggestions and ways to actually find emotional clarity and really just truly trust yourself. So the first series that we're going to talk about is the first episode in this series we're going to talk about is not what they expected. I'm pretty sure you have showed up at some point in your life with a loved one or a coworker, and you changed through growth, pain, burnout, whatever it is, and you're not there as they expected. So Dawn, has that happened to you, and how did that shake out?
Not what you once were. Right?
Exactly.
Like you run into people, actually, so, my best friend is shooting this today. And that just reminds me because we went like a long period of time without talking to each other. And we always are able to pick up like exactly where we left off. Mm-hmm. But if you don't have that deep understanding of who somebody is, right, from like their core, and you run into them after you've made these major changes, it feels so different, right? Because they're interacting with you, you're interacting with them, and they're talking about things that just maybe don't seem as important to you like they used to. They don't seem as relevant to you because maybe you've grown and they haven't. Mm-hmm. I just think that happens quite a bit when you go through kind of a transformative time. How about you?
Yeah, I agree. I've seen it through. The biggest hurdles are when things don't necessarily turn out the way they're supposed to. I find that to be the most challenging and the thing that really pushes you and puts you on a whole other level playing field, because they see you in one role as how you've represented yourself. And it's almost like you're kind of having to stick up for yourself. Like, for instance, if you were maybe, doing too much, giving too much, making, being the people pleaser, and then you recognize that that's not serving you or actually everybody as a whole mm-hmm. in an organization like it should, then you have to step back and say, okay, I am making these changes and it's going to stick because it's really the best for me and it's best for the organization as a whole. And as a leader, I think that's something that presents itself on the regular, because you're always pushing and growing, right? At the end of the day, we're trying to reinvent ourselves, even if it's only in minutia, because you're doing the exact same job, but you're doing it in a different way. And so you're just trying to find that way to reinvent yourself.
Yeah. So I think that, especially when you brought up the fact, the leadership aspect of this conversation, if you're leading an organization, you certainly care about that organization, right? It's your life. And when you're making these transitions, you're always trying to get better, but some things just don't work. Mm-hmm. And sometimes, there's realignment, reorganization, you have to pivot, you have new people coming in and changing, you have growth. Sometimes you have to lay people off and you have to lead through all of that. And I think that if you don't have the clarity of yourself, like, why are we doing this? All the time when I have some sort of a situation to where I have to address the team, I just take a minute, kind of sit quietly and just really make sure that the direction that I've decided to go is authentic with what I believe our organization is trying to accomplish mm-hmm. and what is best for the team in that moment. I really try to make sure, because there's so much chaos happening on a daily basis, especially with the litigation practice, mm-hmm. that if you don't just kind of align yourself and center yourself to make sure that you are consistent with the core values of the company, the core values that you have for yourself, then it's hard to project just the emphasis on what is happening in that moment and why that's so good for the company. Or you're just making the best decisions that you can in that moment.
True.
Based on the history, based on your experience, based on the the temperament of the climate, what's
Yes.
going on. So I think that just taking a moment, regardless of the impact of the situation, always helps guide you through that, whatever, guide you through the meeting, guide you through the transition, guide you through that moment to get you to the next level.
Yeah. And I learned a lot too. And I had this pivot moment where I went from being a peer. They were all my peers. We were all working together side by side in the trenches. And then being elevated to a leader, it's really hard to make that switch.
It is hard.
Because all you know is in the trenches working with them side by side. But what happens if you have those natural leadership skills, you cultivate that because you begin to separate yourself, not in a negative way, but in a way that better serves the company. So at the end of the day, everybody wants to be taken care of. Instinctually, everybody does take care of themselves. And, that even is myself. I really didn't learn that lesson until my company almost went bankrupt. And I did 3 rounds of layoffs. First of all, it was super difficult to do layoffs when you're so close. And, we weren't a huge company, but we were substantial enough that we felt like a family. And, there were single mothers with children that were let go. That was really hard. And so after the first round of layoffs, you have a sense of nervousness amongst everybody else who's left.
Is that vibration?
But you think as a leader, you're working to try to make the best decisions, and you're hopeful that that's enough to cut the bleeding, but it didn't, that wasn't enough. So there were actually 2 more rounds of layoffs. And so by the time I got to the 3rd round of layoffs, the first one, there was a generous severance package. The second one, not so much. The third was even less because, we just weren't meeting the needs as far as the company went.
Right.
And I'll tell you, that was the biggest learning experience of my life because really, really good friends, people that I worked with in the management role and people that I had known and brought into the organization. I got to tell you, when instincts kick in, everybody was out for themselves. Mm-hmm. And really, at the end of the day, I was left to literally my own devices because everybody wondered if the company was going to make it. Mm-hmm. So what happened is those who were still there were hopeful that they would have a job, but everybody went into a 9-to-5 mode. Mm-hmm. We're just going to come in, do what we need to do and scram. Mm-hmm. Well, we had even less people to get the work done. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? To try to get the line of credit paid back. I let the whole collections department go. I became a collections queen. It would take me 72 hours to go through every single account on every single invoice and send an email out to the clients because it was I need this money in. Mm-hmm. And all of those, the biggest lesson of that whole scenario was that when you threaten people's livelihood, which I had, at the end of the day, they didn't know if they were going to have a job. Mm-hmm. The instincts kick in, and the way that people go to protect themselves is just to take care of their own. Mm-hmm. Thankfully, I was able to get the line of credit paid off, get everything taken care of, have a surplus, had the staff. And then that's when my partner and I split and went different directions. And I felt very good about everything that I had done. Whereas I could have just said, I'm out too.
Yeah.
We'll file bankruptcy. I'm out. I'm done. But the aftermath of that is that you really have to make the connection that they were just trying to take care of themselves. Mm-hmm. So the people that maybe at the time I thought, geez, they could be doing more to help.
So how do you deal with that though? When you're in that situation to where you have these core people, because it's obvious that you kept the core people,
yes,
right? We
yes.
get the people that we can, and then it's harder and harder and harder. So you keep that core group. How do you deal with that? Because you're expecting more from them. You're
yes.
You're my people. I really need you guys right now. If we can just come together right now, we can right this ship and make these changes. And when they let you down,
it truly was it really hurt my feelings. I'm human nature kicks in, but it wasn't just one. It was all of them that that felt the same way and went into that instinct mode of self-protect. So, I just did what I needed to do. And then when it was done and over and I was able to reflect, like everybody was basically in panic mode. Mm-hmm. And I did not hold it against any of them because their livelihood was being threatened. And, I've said it before, you can just love what you're doing all day long, every day. But if it doesn't pay the bills, you got to move on.
That's right.
And so, it was a toxic environment at that point because of everything that was going on. And so I just knew it. And they were still the core and I guess you could say loyal ones because they were still there. Mm-hmm. But everybody was just trying to protect themselves. Mm-hmm. So, the whole lesson in that thing is that when you're in a scenario as a leader and you recognize, okay, well, this is just not the best situation. But once you get outside of it, I think you really have to put it into context. Mm-hmm. At that point, I don't think you can take it personal, and I don't think you should take it personal. Nobody said anything hateful like, I'm not going to help you. I'm not going to do that. You know what I'm saying? It didn't go that way. It was their actions. Mm-hmm. It was their actions. And I knew that people were looking for other jobs but they were still showing up and I still needed them to show up. Right.
Yeah.
So the biggest lesson of all is that sometimes when you are not showing up as expected, you've got to put it into context. And that also is true in reverse. Mm-hmm. They weren't showing up as I had expected, how they had for a decade, the previous decade.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
I knew them well. I knew their character. But then here I was, at the end of the day, I'm the one who's responsible for the success of the company. Mm-hmm. And I was not succeeding. I was failing.
So I want to ask you, how did you make the decision because you really did all this in about a year, right?
Yes. Yeah. Really fast.
About a year.
Yes.
What was it within you that made you decide that you're going to dig in as opposed to just leave?
Oh, well, I'm not a quitter.
You're not a quitter.
I am not a quitter. I mean, honestly, oftentimes I'll stay and do something what most people would say is too long, but I need it for my own peace of mind. Mm-hmm. I've had jobs that I've stayed at too long, but the jobs that I did and after I left, I didn't really feel that I'd stayed too long. I knew that I had no regrets. Mm-hmm. So I wasn't just going to throw my hands up and let it go down in flames. I was going to fight until to the bitter end. Yeah. And it worked. It literally just do the next best thing. That was the best advice that somebody gave me. When you're getting so overwhelmed, you have to take the next step. If you overthink and you become paralyzed, what good are you?
None.
Right?
Zero.
So being busy and being productive, regardless of the stress that's going on, that felt way better. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it was so interesting because the line of credit at the bank was exhausted. My partner wasn't going to re-sign for the line of credit to continue. So I had a hard stop on paying back $1 million at the bank. And I had to get it done by the date that it would renew because she wasn't going to renew it. She wasn't going to agree. So they'll call it in. Yeah. Right.
Right.
So that's a lot of motivation. Yeah. That was a lot about, we weren't, me and my partner, neither of us were paid for the whole last year. You just do what you got to do. Mm-hmm. And so, no, did I show up as I had always shown up? The answer is no. Did the staff show up as they always showed up? No, everybody was out of context. Mm-hmm. So, but it was through that growth and that pain that it gave me the perspective later on, once things were better, to look back and to put it in context. Mm-hmm. They didn't show up like I expected them, and I didn't show up like they expected me to, but all of us did the best that we could.
Mm-hmm. And you got to take that and just move forward with it, I guess.
Yeah.
So, but you didn't have, I know we're talking about you so much today, but I'm so interested. So you really didn't have contact with the people that were still at the company for quite some time because of the non-compete, right?
Right.
So when you were able to reconnect with them, what was that like? Did you still feel like you were who you were when you left? So like, I mean, you'd done a lot of growing in that time period.
I did. And the thing about it is that, you know, the staff that were there with me side by side, even though it was stressful and hard, they knew that I had done everything that I could do. Like, so when things shook out and my partner took the company and I walked away, I didn't have any regrets because everybody knew my intentions, what I was trying to do, where we were going, and they knew what I was up against in an effort to try to make that all happen. So yes, the non-compete, you definitely just have to like let everybody go, let the clients go. I needed that breathing space, but I don't think there's a single one. I would love to know, but I don't think there was a single one at the end of the day, the way that it shook out, that held anything against me, because they were right there with me in the office side by side.
They saw.
So even though it was stressful and they didn't know if they would have a livelihood, you know, the next paycheck, they still knew that I was showing up every day. So that didn't make for awkwardness.
I think the showing up part is the most important, you know, the most important thing.
Yes.
I think even, you know, having that motivation every morning, no matter how hard it is, to actually just get up. Like I always tell my kids, like 90% of life is just showing up, right? Just going. You know, I was talking to my son the other night and he had a late class and he had a long day and not a great test that he'd taken. And he just didn't want to go to that last one. And I was like, what do I always say? He's like, I know. We just got to show up. But it's hard. It's really hard, especially when you're going through such a traumatic time and everybody's looking to you to guide them through this difficult time. Like, you know, everybody's looking to you.
Yeah. When they see you stressed, they know that it's not good. Right?
Yeah.
Because, you know, generally, once you're in a position of leadership, I think most people can, and hopefully, like separate the emotion that they would show everyone versus, you know, in a tight-knit management meeting, right?
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, showing up is, and the major part of it, and, you know, being authentic. I think, you know, that's like such a funny thing to talk about, authenticity.
It's such a buzzword now.
Well,
everybody's talking about it.
But when you know, when you're showing up not as expected, and you're talking about authenticity, the rails are off in a negative situation. Right. So yeah, authenticity is a word that is overused. And a few years back, this was several years ago, I went to a vlogging conference, and I swear every single person got up there and said, be authentic, be authentic. I was like, I don't even know what that means anymore, right? What does that mean? And then finally, one speaker got up there and said, you know, when you're building content or you're building a business, it's hard enough to be yourself, to show up and make things happen and make the content and build the business. How hard is it to show up and try to be somebody else? That's what resonated with me, because I was like, oh yeah, like if you're second guessing everything that you're doing. So that kind of speaks to like when we show up and it's not as expected, you know, maybe you look at it and say, all right, is this me? But you can't second guess yourself to undermine what you're doing. Like you can't undermine the growth and the experience. Or if you are reinventing yourself, if you're going from one position to another position within a company, or, you know, from within or even outside, you have to really have a sense of like, I am doing this.
You have to make a decision. You have to make a decision. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do it this way. And then you have to commit. You just have to commit to it, because there's so many different paths that we can take over time in any situation. There's so many different ways to solve a problem. There's so many different ways to guide the train, guide the ship. so many different ways. But, you sit down, you make a decision, you figure out how you think it's best to do it.
Yeah.
And then the second guessing just throws you off that path. So instead of having a straight line through, you're weaving back and forth trying to get through it. And it just totally breaks your momentum.
Well, and you said a moment ago, you talked about alignment. And it is so true. Like, you have to seek alignment over acceptance.
Yeah, 100%. So when we're talking about alignment versus acceptance, you're so worried about what everybody thinks. Like, what do they think about what I'm doing? Or are they judging how I'm handling this? All of these thoughts that go, because you're just normal. You're a normal person. We all have these feelings all the time. But if you get so caught up in worrying about what everybody else is thinking, that just distracts you and deters you from getting what you need to get done.
Yes.
You have to stay aligned with that vision and just push through no matter what, and try to just drown out the noise,
Yeah, most definitely. And then the other thing is, like, what's the definition of success for yourself?
In this context?
Yeah, in this context, like, you have to look at, is your definition of success to, earn X number of dollars, or is it to find peace, purpose? It just depends. Honestly, I think a lot of it depends on what stage of life you're in. And you have to define the success for yourself, and not necessarily let others define what your success is.
Yeah, 100%. I think, kind of walking through that a little bit, and when it comes to, being the person that they expected, making that choice to go on a specific path and stay on that path and not doubting yourself. I think that's the hardest part. I think that's what success is for me. I think going through, owning a company, owning a business, leading people, trying to take care of so many clients, making sure you're doing right by those clients every day.
Yeah.
And trying to keep everybody happy is impossible. You have to have, I just keep on going back to the whole core value things. If you haven't sat down and taken time to set your own personal core values and your company's core values, so you have like these benchmarks that you can look to that can guide you through various parts of these hard times, then you're really, really at a disadvantage, because you know how you feel in the moment, but if you set specific values that you can look to in moments of crisis, then that keeps you on the right path, the path that you set for yourself. I think that's what success is for me.
Yeah. And I agree. Success is also, for me, just saying, okay, where do you want to be this time next year? And like, put it on a calendar or write it down somewhere, because this time next year, it'll be here that quick. And if you don't tie some sort of frame of reference to it, that you can say, oh my goodness, here I was halfway through the year, and I said, next year my goal was to be at this point, and you don't have it written down, then that time frame is just going to come and go. And the years, the days are long and the years are fast, it is so true. And that doesn't just relate to children growing, because that's oftentimes where people use it. It's like life in general. The days can be long, but man, those years fly by.
They do fly by. I don't know. I think what just kind of wrapping this up, I think the most important thing for me in this topic is that it's okay to change. It's okay to be not what somebody expected. It's okay that you were once this person that got you through these months, these years, this job, this career, and that you decided to make a change, and that you're not exactly the same person that you were. I mean, growth is something that I find super important to me. It gives me life. It gives me energy. And I hope I'm not what you expected.
Oh, that's a really good note to end on. I hope I'm not what you expected. If you have any comments, questions, anything for ladies-in-law, you can email us at hello@ladiesinlaw.com or comment below. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.